everyone, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all okay. Today is a really good video actually because I'm just going through all the books I've read so far this year, January, February and March, and just give my opinion on them basically. I think I've read about 16 or 17 books. It's something like that. I have a mixture of physical books and online books. So I will, if I have a physical book, I'll show it. If not, I'll just put up a little picture of the book I read, because I do read a lot on my phone through the library as well. So the first book of the year that I read was Wrapped with a Bow, and it's by Lily Vale. I read it online, so I have a physical copy of it. But I started it like around Christmas. I think it's just after Christmas. So I was still kind of in a Christmassy mood. And I started reading that, but I wanted to finish it before the end of the year and I couldn't quite do it. So I did finish it like just on the cut, like I think it was New Year's Day I finished it. So it was my first finished book of 2024. What can I say? I didn't rate it very highly. I gave it 2 stars. It's just really, so it's a grumpy sunshine trope. So the two love interests in the story, he's grumpy, she's sunshine, but her name's Alicia. She's really annoying in the book. So Alicia works for an organisation that films, her job is to sort of secure locations to film. She lives in a town called Piney Peaks, which is like really like, it's like a Christmas town all year round. And there's a famous Christmas house in the town. So years ago, it was a location for a Christmas movie. And now the town's like famous because of it. And in particular, that house is famous. And all the locals like love it and it attracts tourists and things like that. Now she is friends with the owner of that house, which is an elderly lady, and she secures that as a location for an upcoming project. The lady then dies and the house is passed down to her nephew, enter grumpy guy, and him and Alicia have a sort of slapstick comedy meet cute, and their story develops from there. She has to sort of convince him to let her use the house as like a location for this project she's got going on, but because he's like a grumpy character, she thinks it's going to be a bit of a challenge. So it's just about, that's what it's about really, and it's a romance, so it's just about how that develops. It was a bit of a slog. I found Alicia really annoying, so she really made me cringe at times, so I just didn't. I find it really difficult sometimes to warm to a book if I'm not really gelling with the main character. That's what happened here, so I didn't really enjoy that. But I did enjoy the description of the location, Piney Peaks, the idea of it being like an all-round Christmas town. I quite liked that. But yeah, I gave it 2 stars. I didn't really think much of it. Next book I read was an online read as well, and it was Mythos by Stephen King. I really enjoyed it. So mythology retellings are really becoming a fast favourite genre of mine. Like I just really enjoy them. I really feel absorbed in everything they offer, and I love that they just feel really magical to me. So I was a bit unsure about starting Stephen Fry's books because I know he's so clever, but I really liked his way with words. I could keep up. There are a lot of characters to keep up with. It kind of, it's not really linear and it jumps from one story to the next. Lots of stories, lots of characters, and it's just like jumping between and all over the place all the time. So that takes some getting used to, but it was fine and I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars, and I can't wait to read Troy and Heroes, the other mythology retellings in the series. So yeah, I really liked that. Next I read Lord of the Flies and I gave it 2 stars. I have a really love-hate relationship with classics, and with this I didn't get along with it at all. So it's about, I didn't know actually anything about it. I obviously knew, I'd heard of Lord of the Flies, hadn't seen the film or anything, and didn't actually really know what it was about. But it's about some boys who become, it's almost like they're like stranded on this desert island. So they try to survive, but they also like, there's like two different groups, and they kind of gets a bit nasty and they get a bit animalistic almost, and kind of the 2 groups are kind of against each other, and they're really like young boys, and it's a bit, some of it was quite disturbing. I don't know, I really didn't enjoy it. I found some of the were, some of the parts of the book as well, really difficult to interpret, and I wasn't sure how the author wanted me as a reader to interpret that. So I was thinking about that a lot, and I don't really want to think too hard when I'm reading books. I just want to enjoy them. So it really affected the reading experience, and it just took away from it for me. But even if it wasn't hard to interpret, it's just disturbing. It wasn't my cup of tea at all. The next book I read was And the Mountains Echoed by Khaled Hosseini. I have been recommended Khaled Hosseini's books umpteen amounts of times, so we was always going to cross paths at some point. Yeah, even my mum, who's not really a reader, she had read The Kite Runner and said it was quite good and stuff. So I went online onto my library, and I sort of put a hold on And the Mountains Echoed, A Thousand Splendid Suns, and The Kite Runner. And The Mountains Echoed was the first of those books to become available. So that's the first one I read. As my first foray into Khaled Hosseini, like, I really enjoyed his writing style. So the story is about siblings, a boy and a girl, who they're on, like, at the beginning of the book, they're on this journey across the desert with their father, and they become separated. So the girl is sort of, I think, oh gosh, I hate not remembering certain parts, but the girl is like left with a family, and this father takes the son home. And I don't want to give away the ending, so I'm just going to say it's not really plot based, it's more character based, and it's just about their lives as they grow up separately from each other, the world, what's going on in their country as well while they're growing up. So yeah, it was a really good book. It's really beautiful. The writing is really rich and powerful and descriptive. You really feel like you're there. I haven't really come across an author like that. Khaled's ability to manipulate the written word was quite something. His writing's really, really immersive. And you don't come across those authors often. So it did make me want to then read The Kite Runner and A Thousand Splendid Suns. So yeah, I did enjoy the book. And even though there's nothing I can say against the book really, because I really, really enjoyed it, but I gave it 4 stars. And even now with, when did I read that book? I read it back in January. So with all this time to reflect, I still don't know why I haven't given it 5 stars, but I just cannot. Like, it's a 4-star read for me, and I don't know what's missing. I can't put my finger on it. It's missing something. It's still an absolutely breathtaking read for me, but there's just something that fails to push it over the edge for a 5-star read for me. But really, really enjoyed it nonetheless. So after that read, I needed a less heavy read, a light read. So I read Maybe in Another Life, and the Taylor Jenkins Reid book. She honestly can do no wrong in my eyes. Like, she's an auto-buy author for me. I absolutely love all of her books that I've read, which is the majority. I think there's 1 or 2 that I haven't, which is like more her earlier books. Oh no, have I? I'm not sure actually. I think there's like 1 or 2 I haven't read. I'll have to look into that. I can't remember. But I just enjoyed all of her books so much. I gave Maybe in Another Life 4 stars. So I hate sometimes when I borrow books because I can't remember the main characters' names now to tell you about it. But it's almost like a sliding doors concept. It's a story. The female main character, it's her story and how her life could be different. So it kind of follows her life, her making a different decision one night and then her life running sort of parallel to each other. So it goes between the two. So you read about this life and you read about that life, and based on one decision she makes. I think it's like going home from a club, I believe, with somebody, how her life looks when she does go home with him, and how her life looks when she says no, when she doesn't go home with him. And I really quite enjoyed the concept. I'm aware of the concept. I know it's been done, but I I haven't really read a book with that concept before, so I did enjoy it. And you know, it's interesting. You know, it's like the butterfly effect, how one decision can change your life really, and how different your life could be based on one decision. So the plot isn't strong, but I feel like the characters are. So it is a been done before plot, but the characters are what made it for me. So they felt like real people. I enjoyed them all. I feel like the character development was strong. So yeah, I did enjoy that, and I enjoyed the alternating storylines. It's what kept me interested. The stories themselves separately aren't really interesting enough, really, to keep me. They didn't really. If it was just a linear storyline, it wouldn't have been enough, basically. So the alternating storylines really worked well in this respect, and I really then wanted to see how both of them played out and how different the end of each story would be. So it really did keep me intrigued. And yeah, I read it really quickly, this book, because it did captivate me actually. So yeah, I gave that 4 stars. I finished my cup of tea now, so my hands feel really awkward. I don't really know what to do with them. The next book I read was I went back to Khaled Hosseini, so it must have meant that my next his book then became available, and that was 1,000 Splendid Suns. This book took my breath away, to be honest. So I mean, the writing style is exactly like with And the Mountains Echoed. It was rich, it was powerful, it was descriptive, but for me the story just had that extra something, and it completely eclipsed And the Mountains Echoed for me. Not many books can do this, but it broke my heart and like made it swell, like made it feel so full at the same time. And I don't know how, like how can a story be so heartbreaking but also like in ways so lovely as well. Like it's a really difficult thing to get right, and he really did. So it's about a young girl, and I can't remember her, Mariam. I want to say Mariam. And she kind of idolizes her dad. Her mum, at the point of when the story starts, her mum has sadly already passed away, and she just has her dad. Her dad got her mum pregnant and he was like in and out of her life. He had a lot more money than her mum did, and her mum sort of brought her up, and he dipped in and out whenever he liked, really, and he sort of went and had other children and things. And then Mariam idolized her dad and put him on a pedestal, really, and he ends up marrying her off to somebody. And then it's about Mariam's life with her new husband. He doesn't treat her very nicely. Her life isn't a happy one. And then, I don't really want to spoil it, but something happens in the book. She gets to know another lady, and they become really... the story then becomes about their relationship, really. I don't really want to give away the relationship, whether it's good or bad or a mix of both, but then it's about the development of their relationship and the dynamics within the household with Mariam and her husband as well. It's so immersive. I felt like I knew all the characters personally. Like I feel like I'm friends with Mariam. The writing is so masterful. I felt like I was there with them. I felt like I was in the room on every page. And after I finished the book, I remember I was thinking about it. It really made me think. I just was thinking about those characters for like a little while after as well, like almost like my friends, like wondering how they were doing. Yeah, it's a must read in your lifetime book for me, and I gave it 5 stars. It was my first 5-star read of the year. The next book I read was Maureen Fry and the Angel of the North by Rachel Joyce. It was online again. So last year I read Harold Fry, the Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry. And I quite enjoyed that, or I enjoyed it more than I did this anyway. So the Harold Fry book, I suppose I should describe that to you if you don't understand this one. But Harold and Maureen are an elderly couple. They've been married for ages. They have one grown. Oh no, they don't have a child because he passed away, I think. So it's just them. They live in this house, and they're just living their day-to-day lives. And Harold Fry one day he receives a letter from somebody called Queenie, and he decides, rather than write back, he decides to walk all the way from his house at the bottom of England up to where Queenie wrote him the letter from, which is all the way up by Newcastle, so right up to the topmost of England. So he decides to go on that long journey by foot, and it's his story. It's basically follows his pilgrimage, and Maureen stays at home in that story. This is it's a book off the back of that. So this is Maureen. I don't know why this book was written. I actually really like Rachel Joyce as an author. Miss Benson's Beetles, one of my favourite books ever. That was like an unexpected gem of a read for me, but I just didn't get why this book was written. So this is a book, and it's written after the events of Harold Fry, and it's like Maureen then decides to do something similar, but it was just missing the charm, the charm that the Harold Fry book did have. And Harold was quite likeable, really, but Maureen isn't. Maureen is not likeable at all as a character. So it didn't have that charm. The main character didn't gel with her. And for those reasons, it was a slog. It was a slog of a read. And I really didn't really enjoy it too much. Okay, so after Maureen Fry, The Kite Runner became available. So another Khaled Hosseini book online. I was really excited to read it because obviously I loved A Thousand Splendid Suns, and also enjoyed And the Mountains Echoed. And obviously The Kite Runner is probably his most famous book of the three. That's the one that my mum read, and she was like, you have to read it. And that's the one recommended by others as well, like The Kite Runner, and it's been made into a film as well. So I was really looking forward to watching it. I thought that this might be another 5-star read for me. It wasn't quite a 5-star read, it was a 4-star read. So it still had the same sorts of themes, and it was that rich, powerful storytelling as well. But I didn't enjoy it as much as A Thousand Splendid Suns. So coming from reading that book and loving it so much, this, again, it felt like it just lacked something to me. It just didn't quite touch A Thousand Splendid Suns. I found it harder to read. I think all of those books carry some sort of weight with them. They don't explore easy themes. They're not light reads. But this one in particular, something about it made me feel like, for the first time in reading a Khaled Hosseini book, I felt quite uncomfortable and disturbed by it. That doesn't take away from, that's got no effect on the score I gave it, but it just had a slightly different feeling. So it's about it's about the relationship of two boys from young children. Something happens that I don't even want to say what happens, because I feel like it is a bit of a spoiler really, but something happens at some point that changes their friendship forever, and it then explores the life of the main character, and in parts the life of his friend as well, as they grow up into adults. So again, and it's also, the conflict that's happening in Afghanistan at the time of the book. I think they're set in the 1980s, 70s, 80s or something like that. So yeah, it follows like real things that happened, which is interesting. And I did Wikipedia and like Google a few things. I was like, oh, what's this happening? And so that part, I found that bit interesting. But yeah, it was more disturbing than the rest for me. And I think because I loved A Thousand Splendid Suns so much, any book I read after that is going to be hard to live up to those expectations. Yeah, so it didn't quite get there for me, but still really enjoyed The Kite Runner. Okay. I then read, because I was intrigued. I'm not a huge fantasy fan, I have to admit. I have read Harry Potter. For me, it's not, I don't feel like it's a strong fantasy book. Not like the fantasy books of today, but I did put on hold at the library this book because I was curious. Everybody's going on about it, and I really find it difficult to stay away from books that have a lot of hype. I like to just see what the hype is myself. So I read A Court of Thorn and Roses. I borrowed it from the library. Now. So the story follows Feyre, I think is how you say her name, Feyre. She, is it a spoiler? I don't think it is. She kills a fairy, which is like a magical being that's not very well liked in her community. The fairies are like, nobody likes them. She kills one day. She's a hunter, so she hunts for her poor family. Doesn't know it's a fairy when she kills it. Quickly finds out it is, and then some other fairies come to her house later on, and they take her away as punishment to live in their court with the rest of the fairies. And it's been likened to Beauty and the Beast. So, you know, like she's trapped in this magical castle with what they think, what everybody perceives to be beasts, which are fairies. Nobody likes them. And it follows on from there. Can't say too much more. I know that these books are well liked, loved. They have a cult following. They are loved, these books. And I would have had no desire to read this had it not been for the hype that surrounds it, because it's like an itch that needs to be scratched for me. I just have to see about it myself. Now, when I started it, I was incredibly disappointed by the first 2/3 of the book. I mean, I find it really hard to DNF a book. It's just this annoying thing in me, and I don't know what it is, where I just can't, I have to finish a book. It just took so long to get into it. So the 2/3 of it, the first 2/3 were, for me, they were awful. And I was thinking 2-star read. It was just doing nothing for me. The world building I didn't feel like it was enough. It wasn't captivating me. The characters were just annoying. I didn't care about how their relationship progressed. I just didn't care about any of it. It didn't feel like it. It didn't do anything for me. And then the last third of the book, I was like, okay, I'm in. Like, I was mildly interested. And it did get a bit better, but why did it take hundreds of pages to get to that point? Is that such a risk to take? Like, yeah, so that wasn't for me. But the last few, I don't know, a few hundred or so pages, maybe 200, the last third of the book, I was like, okay, I get it. Like, this is better. So I became more invested in the story then. And then from then I went straight on to A Court of Mist and Fury, the second book in the series. Everybody said that this was better, and I think everybody likes this book better. It's got a better score on Goodreads than the first one, but I didn't enjoy it as much. So it follows on from the story. It picks up from where the first book left off. Which I can't even say how that ends because it's a spoiler, obviously, if you're one of the very, very few people that haven't read that book yet. But yeah, it just follows it on, and it's a different world which I can't really, a different court, which I can't really say why she's in a different court or anything like that. But yeah, so there's new characters introduced, and everybody, I suppose everybody likes those characters better, or likes that court better, or the storyline between it, but around it. But again, I was just waiting for it to get interesting. This one never really, it didn't capture me in the same way the end of the first one did. So for me, it didn't really get interesting at all, actually. But yeah, I actually rated A Court of Thorns and Roses 4 stars, and this one 3, because I didn't enjoy it as much. I was like the very few people that preferred the first one, just because the ending, it just saved it for me. So yeah. Then I read Bunny. I have wanted to read Bunny for ages. So Bunny by Mona Awad. It's about a group of girls in Warren University in America, and there's a group of girls called bunnies. I liken them to be like the popular kids at school, but the more I read it, the more I thought maybe they wasn't. And the female main character is sort of almost kind of obsessed with this bunch of girls, and she has nicknames for all of them, like Creepy Doll Face and things like that, which isn't their actual names. And she's kind of heavily invested in them. She spends a lot of time like looking at the girls, and just, yeah, she's quite, you get quite early on, she seems to be quite upset. Samantha, her name has just come to me, sorry, the main character's called Samantha. Yeah, so you become to know quite quickly that she's quite invested in the lives of these girls. And one day she gets invited to join them, like to socialise with them, and she's and ahhing, and eventually she decides to go, and the story develops from there. I cannot say too much. It was not what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, but it just went down a completely different route to what I thought it was going to be. And I really like Mona's style of writing. I don't really know how to describe it. I did laugh out loud quite a lot. I don't think she meant for it to be funny really, but it did make me laugh. It did make me think of school, like back when I was in school as well myself. So yeah, I did like her style of writing. It just didn't, the last half wasn't the second half wasn't as strong as the first half for me. So I started off and I was reading and I was really invested, and then it kind of mellowed out for me, and then I was like, oh, I'm not really sure about this anymore. I'm not really sure that I care too much about how this ends. So that was a bit of a shame, but I gave it 3 stars because, yeah, sort of like middling really. But it's really unexpected, some of the plot twists in there, and the ending of the book, like the very last sentence, is so haunting, and I can still think about it now, and it made me completely have a different view on the book from what I thought I was reading to what I maybe now I think what I actually did read, which it just gave me I interpreted the book differently from reading that last sentence, which was interesting. Hello there, this is Taylor from the future, editing this video, and when I filmed the segment of the video with the physical books I owned, and I looked back at the footage, it was just a black screen. So I've literally lost the whole thing. I still have the audio, but I don't have the image. So I'm just going to have to put this annoying picture of me smiling at you for however long it takes for me to talk through these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books. And I'll put the picture of the books up. But yeah, just to say, slight error on my part. I don't know what happened with that, but I'll talk through the books now like this. Sorry about that. My Account by Colleen Rooney. I got this for Christmas, so my mum gave this to me for Christmas. She knows I'm I love Colleen. So back in the day, I read her autobiography, Welcome to My World, and I read her other, more like a fashion book, Colleen's Real Style, and I love them both. Now, My Account, it follows the whole Agatha Christie thing, the court case, and all the drama surrounding that from Colleen's point of view, and I found that really interesting. The only thing about this is that half of this is about her life again, which I've already read in Welcome to My World, so I had a bit of deja vu reading this. That's the only thing I would say. I really enjoyed the following the court case and things from her perspective and things we didn't get to find out about and how she felt about things. So that was really interesting. But yeah, half of this book I felt like I'd already read because it covers a lot of her upbringing, and I knew things before I was reading them. I was like, I've read this before, I know what she's about to say here. So yeah, it was just quite samey to her other book, but I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 3 stars still. Next, I read Too Late by Colleen Hoover. Must refrain from saying Colleen Rooney. And it's a thriller type book. I loved Verity. So I know that Colleen Hoover can write thrillers really well, because I think she did an excellent job with Verity. I really liked Verity. So I was expecting this to be similar and to grip me in the same way. It says in the back, it's a breathtaking psychological suspense story. It's about a girl called Sloane who is in a relationship with Asa. Asa is not a good guy. He is like a criminal, and then there becomes an undercover detective or cop in the case, and he inadvertently meets Sloane whilst trying to get to Asa and sort of infiltrate his group. And then it's about the dynamics of those 3 people, so the undercover cop, Sloane, and Asa, who are in a relationship. And there are some difficult parts that I found difficult to read in the book. For example, the very first page is sort of a sexual encounter between the Asa and Sloane, who are in a relationship. And it's quite an uncomfortable read. From the very first page, so that I found a bit whoa, and I really enjoyed the first bit. I was like, oh, I really, this is quite fast paced, and yeah, this is like a page turner. But then the twists and the turns become a bit ridiculous, and I just didn't end up enjoying it as much as I wanted to. Some bits I found a bit cringy as well. Really, it's definitely not anything like Verity. If you enjoyed that book, it just felt a bit silly at times. It did start off dark and gripping, everything you want from a thriller, but it's not as slick as Verity, and it definitely lost its way, and I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I really love Taylor Jenkins Reid, as you know, and I'll just read anything she writes. I read her shopping list. I think she's amazing. So Forever Interrupted is about, I need to check her name. Elsie, who meets Ben. So Elsie and Ben meet one day on New Year's Day in a pizza shop, I believe, and they get married really quickly. It's like a whirlwind romance. And then Ben dies quite early on in the book, and that's not no, I was just checking, it's not a spoiler. Ben passes away, and obviously they haven't really met each other's, they don't really know much about each other's lives because they got married quite quickly. And then Elsie sort of is about grief and her coming to terms with the death. And also at the hospital when he passes away, she meets Susan, which is Ben's mum. So it's about their relationship as well. Susan, obviously, she doesn't know anything about Elsie. Ben didn't tell his mum he was married. And yes, Elsie and Susan have never met. So it's like the dynamic of their relationship in the wake of Ben's death. And I just found it really... it was really touching. It was really heartbreaking. I think Taylor Jenkins Reid really knows how to write emotions. It's almost like she's lived through something similar. She knows exactly how that character would feel at that moment in time, and we're never left guessing how anybody feels. Like, she does a really good job of covering the emotions of that time. Like, it's really traumatic for both Elsie and Susan. And I just really enjoyed this story. I did find Elsie a bit annoying at times, like with how sort of like, I don't know, was her husband, but how obsessive she is over Ben, and she's a bit like, she thinks, I just feel like she undermines Susan as well sometimes, but overall I really enjoyed it. It did emotionally damage me, I feel like. Yeah, just has you feeling all those emotions, but I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Next is Alice by Christina Henry. I didn't know much about I didn't know anything at all actually about Christina Henry before I was lent this book by my cousin, who he told me to read it. And I think Christina Henry does a lot of fairy tale retellings. So Alice is a fairy tale retelling of Alice in Wonderland. So it takes place after the original Alice in Wonderland story has happened, and Alice is in a mental asylum set in Victorian England, because nobody believes that she has gone through what she has gone through. Nobody believes what happened with the Wonderland. So she's in a mental asylum. She meets like a friend through the wall of the mental asylum, and suddenly the mental asylum catches fire and she escapes with this character. And it follows them into their escape from the mental asylum. First of all, they're the only ones to escape, like the burning building, and then they have to go on a sort of quest to do what I won't say. I'll just check if it says. No, it doesn't, so I better not say. But they escape together and they have to go on a quest to save everybody from something. And I just really enjoyed it. It refers to the White Rabbit a lot. The White Rabbit not being a very nice character, who sort of follows Alice. Obviously, like, we know that what happened to Alice is very real, even though nobody believes her. And the White Rabbit is like still out there, and she has flashbacks to her like life or what happened to her in the Wonderland. And I just really enjoyed this take on it. Really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars, and I now really want to read Christina Henry's other books, because they're going to be really, really similar. The way that she retells it was quite clever. And if you like fairy tales and things like that, then you'll like this, I think. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And the White Rabbit, like, I'll never look at him the same again. I bought this myself because I've never read a Stephen King book. This is The Shining by Stephen King, and I've seen a lot of Stephen King films, obviously taken from the books, but I've never read one of his actual books. So I thought I'd start with The Shining because I absolutely love the film The Shining. So I thought the book would be great, or maybe like even better. And I know that the film adaptation is very different to the book, and that's quite controversial. So I wasn't expecting them to be really similar, but I just wanted to read the book as well to see what that was like. I was really eager to read this actually, because I don't read much horror, more thriller. So I was really looking forward to seeing how a horror might be a bit different to read, if I would actually feel like a bit frightened reading it. So Stephen King is a really great storyteller. It's really really, really descriptive, goes into really almost over the top detail about everything. Obviously the book is quite chunky, The Shining, there's quite a lot to it. I could actually feel the tension as I was reading it, so I could feel it kind of buzzing away as I was going through the pages. I wasn't like scared to read it, but I did feel the tension. So yeah, he's really good at building the tension. In this, I was sort of, in ways I wish I hadn't seen the film already, so I could go into reading this with a complete blank mind. But I did find myself, and this has nothing to do with Stephen King, but I did find myself just comparing it to the film a lot and waiting for things to happen, because I know I've seen the film and I was like, oh, I know this bit's coming next, and I know that they're very different because I knew that already before, but I just couldn't help myself comparing to the film. Yeah. And there, if you've seen Friends, when Joey reads The Shining, he says, oh, there were moments when he wanted to put the book in the freezer because it gets too scary. I did have those moments where I'm like, oh, this could be a book in the freezer moment, but it didn't scare me to the point of I felt like I had to stop reading. But yeah, there were points when you was like, you know, wondering what was going to happen. You could feel things escalating. the Overlook is very much the main character in this book. So, you know, that we know it has an evil presence, but it's very much front and centre in this book. And Jack is secondary, which I feel that in the film it's the other way around. So if you're not familiar with The Shining, it's about a family who, so it's Jack and, what's the wife's name? You have Jack and his wife, I can't remember her name, and they have a son called Danny. Jack takes on a job to look after the Overlook Hotel during the winter months because it becomes completely snowed in. Everybody goes home for the winter and they need somebody to basically check on the boiler and keep the hotel ticking over. So it's a really lonely job because Jack and his family are going to be the only ones living at the hotel. The hotel being the Overlook, which is really, it's got like a really decorated past and lots of shady things happening and lots of murders and things like that. So it's got a lot going on there. And it talks about The Shining, which is the ability to read people's minds and also like flashes and communicate with people and see things like ghosts and things like that, which Jack's son Danny has. So he has this gift, The Shining, so he can sort of communicate with other people who have The Shining. They can communicate without talking, so secretly in a room with other people they can sort of hear each other's thoughts, and they can hear other people's thoughts as well that don't have The Shining, and they can see things sort of that nobody else can see. So it's a really interesting concept, and the hotel is very evil. When everybody leaves for like the winter and Jack and his family are getting snowed in, the fact the hotel sort of takes a hold on Jack and he slowly descends into madness. And yeah, I won't say much more. But his writing is a lot because it's so detailed. I had to digest it really slowly, but I did enjoy it. I do want to read more of his books. The ending I didn't really love at all. I much preferred the ending of the film to the ending of the book, and I don't really want to compare the two here, but I just thought the ending to this was it almost seemed a bit silly. And it kind of was a bit random for me, but yes, I did enjoy it, and I gave it 4 stars. That's quite high, really. And last but not least, I've recently finished this book, and it is Piranesi. It's quite a short book, actually. It's less than 300 pages, I think. And it's by Susanna Clarke. I really enjoyed Piranesi. I've seen a lot of talk about Piranesi, and I actually had no idea what it was about. Even reading the blurb, it's quite vague, really. So honestly, it's a journey. This book is a journey. It's a ride, and it is vague, and all the way through. Even like you're kind of like, I finished it and I'm like, what is going on? What happened? What is this all about? It's a bit crazy. So it says Piranesi lives in the house. Perhaps he always has. And then it says messages keep appearing from somebody. So Piranesi believes that he lives in the house alone, apart from there's one other person who lives with him called the other. Piranesi believes this to be the extent of the world. The house is the world, and then he lives there with somebody called the other. And messages start appearing from somebody that's not obviously from him, and it's not from the other, so he thinks somebody else coexists with him and the other in this world. And then it's about, he's trying to uncover who these messages are from, what's going on, and then it sort of follows that sort of journey of trying to find out what's going on. Honestly, I read the blurb and I was like, okay, I still got no idea what this book's about. And then even as I was reading it, I was like, what is this book about? It's a very weird little gem of a book, because I did really, really enjoy it, and I can't say too much about it without giving it away. I don't want to tell you what happens because you can't know, but also I don't know how to tell you what the book's about without telling you what happens. It's incredibly confusing and vague, and give it a go. I don't know how to describe it to you, but I just found, it's weird. It's a very odd, strange little book, but it's kind of delightful at the same time. And because it's a short book, you can get through it really quickly, and it doesn't really take too much time. And it's like, you find those books once in a while that you're like, I'm glad I read that, and I'm glad I found that. And for me, honestly, Piranesi, I don't think, unless I saw other people recommending it and reading it, I don't think I would have picked it up. And I really assumed from the front cover, I just thought it was a Greek, or I thought it was a mythology retelling, and it's really not. That's just what the front cover speaks to me. It tells me it's a retelling, but it's not. It's really, really not. Possibly as far removed from a mythology retelling, actually, as possibly could be. But again, I can't go into too much detail because I just don't know what to tell you. Give it a go. It was a good find for me. I'm glad I read it, and I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. So that's everything. That's all the books I've read in 2024. I feel like so far I've rambled a lot. So I'm gonna really quickly end this here now. Please like this video if you did, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye.